The sound of hooves echoed through the cool, evening air as a lone rider approached the crumbling ranch. It wasn't the first time someone had passed through these parts, but tonight felt different. The familiar landscape of dry plains and rocky hills stood in stark contrast to the man who now rode toward it. A boy no older than 16, his face hard and determined, was seeking something beyond what this desolate land could offer. A boy who had nothing left but a desire for justice, or perhaps for revenge. The ranch was a shell of its former self. The barn sagged under the weight of time, its roof falling in places, while the once verdant fields now lay parched and cracked. A few rusted farm tools sat abandoned under the porch, reminders of a life that had once thrived but was now hollowed by loss and regret. But in the middle of the dusty wasteland, a figure stood silently, a cowboy who had lived through every hardship and loss the West could throw at him. Clayton Matthews, once known for his skill with cattle and horses, was now a man bound by a past he couldn't escape. Clayton Matthews had been just a boy when his father died. His father, a rancher, a protector, a man of quiet strength, had been killed by the outlaws who roamed these lands. For years, Clayton had buried that pain, burying the man he had become and the life he once knew. His father's death had turned Clayton into something he didn't recognize, a man consumed by a thirst for vengeance. But despite the loss, Clayton wasn't a stranger to these harsh lands. He knew the weight of this world, the laws of survival, the way the strong preyed on the weak. And yet, every day since that fateful night, he had wished for a way out, for a chance to feel something else beyond this emptiness that stretched out before him. As the sun sank beneath the horizon, the air grew cooler, and Clayton's thoughts grew darker. The boy had arrived earlier that morning, disheveled, bruised, and hungry. But there was something else in his eyes, an urgent plea for help, something Clayton hadn't seen in a long time. A glimmer of hope. The boy, despite his thin frame and ragged clothes, had a determination about him. His name was Nathaniel, an orphan, just like Clayton had been after his father died. Nathaniel had wandered into town, seeking refuge, but there was more in him than just hunger. He had come to Clayton with a message, one that Clayton couldn't ignore. The boy had lost his own father, in much the same way, and he wanted justice, or revenge. "You were once the man who could make them pay," Nathaniel had said, looking up at Clayton with those desperate, wide eyes. "Now, you're the man who can do it again." Clayton could feel the weight of the boy's words, his anger building inside him. What had Clayton been waiting for all these years? Was he really so different from the outlaws who had taken his father? The night drew near, and with it, the rising tension. The air smelled of dust and smoke from a nearby wildfire, and the wind whispered the secrets of the past. Clayton sat alone by the fire, staring at the stars that had watched over him for years. It was there in the stillness of the night that he heard it. Hooves. It wasn't the sound of just any rider. Clayton knew this one, a rider he feared. As the horse crested the hill, Clayton recognized the dark silhouette of Duke Bell, the leader of the same outlaw gang that had killed his father years ago. His breath caught in his throat. How long had he been waiting for this moment? Was he ready to face the man who had taken it all from him? Duke had a reputation, a ruthless, cold-hearted killer, and tonight he had come for something more than Clayton's ranch. "You've been hiding for too long, Matthews," Duke sneered, his voice rough like gravel. "You think you're still a man of the land? You think you still have any claim to what's mine?" Clayton gripped his gun, but his hand trembled. His mind raced, replaying the past, the rage bubbling up, yet something held him back. Was this justice? Was this the way it was supposed to end? Duke rode closer, the creaking of his saddle breaking the silence. Clayton took a deep breath, forcing himself to think. But before he could draw his gun, Nathaniel stepped into the scene, his own revolver raised. "Stop!" Nathaniel shouted, his voice trembling. "Don't make the same mistake again, Clayton. Don't let your anger control you." Clayton turned to face the boy, his heart hammering in his chest. "You don't understand," Clayton muttered, his voice strained. "I need this. I need to make them pay for what they did to my father. This is the only way." The wind howled, and the fire crackled in the distance. The decision was hanging in the air, heavy and final. Clayton could feel the storm inside him building. But then Nathaniel stepped closer, his eyes pleading. "You don't have to kill him. You don't have to be like them," the boy said softly, his words cutting through the chaos in Clayton's mind. Clayton's hand wavered, the gun still raised. Duke watched them both, a smirk creeping across his face. For a moment, everything seemed frozen. Then Clayton lowered his gun, his heart aching. "You're right," Clayton whispered, his voice cracking. "This isn't justice. It's just another cycle, and I won't be part of it anymore." Nathaniel's expression softened, and Clayton knew the boy had helped him make the hardest decision of his life. Duke, seeing that the moment had passed, cursed under his breath. But Clayton wasn't looking at him anymore. His gaze was fixed on Nathaniel, and in that moment, Clayton realized that the boy had done something Clayton hadn't thought possible. He had saved him from becoming the man he feared. As Duke rode away into the darkness, Clayton exhaled a breath he didn't know he was holding. "Thank you," Clayton said, his voice thick with emotion. "I didn't know if I could stop it." Nathaniel nodded, his eyes filled with quiet understanding. "You didn't have to. You just needed someone to remind you that mercy is stronger than revenge." As the dawn broke, Clayton and Nathaniel stood side by side, looking out over the land that had once been a prison of pain, but now was a place of new beginnings. Together, they had stopped the cycle. The day grew brighter as they walked back toward the ranch, the light casting long shadows behind them. Clayton knew that the journey wasn't over. There were still ghosts to face, still a ranch to rebuild, and still a future to face. But for the first time in years, Clayton felt hope. "What now?" Clayton asked, his voice uncertain but filled with possibility. "Now we rebuild," Nathaniel said, smiling as they walked toward the barn together.